As you talk about what organizations can do, I think a lot about the algorithm and the algorithms that LinkedIn applies to its technology. How does it happen that a recruiter or a candidate would rise to the top in your algorithm? How does that work behind the scenes?
With regard to the algorithm, it's basically looking at your profile information. A lot of that stuff is right there on the surface. Increasingly, what's interesting is we're starting to dig into search results, not only from a relevance perspective, but also, we were talking earlier about unintended consequences. And when you're designing these algorithms, it's incredibly important that you're aware of how some of the design may prevent certain people from obtaining certain kinds of opportunities. Recently, we were looking at some work on unconscious bias, and just the way in which certain people will describe themselves versus other people can prevent them from rising to the top of a set of search results. So one of our teams was recently recognized for some work in machine learning and AI based on seeing that when women will describe their current job-seeking status, they may be less inclined to suggest they're open to new opportunities, literally that wording. And yet that wording has become essential to a service that we call Open Candidates. And open candidates are far more likely to receive inbound messages from recruiters. So to the extent people are not raising their hands, but they are open to new roles, that would be an unintended consequence. So we have to be very, very thoughtful about the way in which those algorithms are designed.
And is it possible to design an algorithm perfectly so that that's not happening?
Perfectly is certainly the ideal. I think it's a manifestation of the people that create that code, and I don't think anybody's perfect. But to the extent we are on the lookout for these manifestations of unconscious bias, we can certainly start to root them out more effectively.
Maybe there's a place that they could all be posted.
That
all of the things that you as a candidate do that could potentially take you out of the running, purely the words that you post on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. I'm just trying to think. I was trying to think of. There's some clear upsides. I was trying to think again.
Yeah.
Unintended consequences of the downside. If you start posting that stuff, you're going to have people gaming it. So there's always.
Do you think people game it already?
Yeah. Yes.
I would guess so too.
Yeah, people game virtually everything.
Yes. Okay, so 560 or 530 million members at this
Currently
point.
562.
560. Yeah. Okay, 560 million members at this point. That's a lot of data. It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
How are you protecting the privacy of those people?
So roughly 8 or 9 years ago, we started to see in the industry backlash to some changes that certain companies were making to terms of service and to how data was being leveraged. And we got together and decided to create a very clear framework for exactly just that. And where we came out, it's kind of the 3 C's is what we call it. Which is consistency and clarity and control. And just taking a step back, it's important to recognize that from a values perspective, we have 6 codified values at LinkedIn, 5 cultural dimensions. Take it very, very seriously. The first and most important value is that our members come first. By far the most important. We're a consumer platform upon which we have multiple enterprise businesses that have been built. And if we don't do everything within our power to maintain the trust of our members, we don't have a business. Certainly not in the long term. So the idea was to, in putting the member first, think about how we leverage that data. And first and foremost is this idea of consistency. And a friend a long time ago, a very smart friend of mine, taught me that trust is consistency over time. And there's no substitute for either one of those things. And so one of the first things we decided was we were going to be as consistent as possible with how we leverage data, rather than whipsaw folks and do one thing one day and change it the next week and then come back and change it again. It just erodes trust. And so we decided to minimize changes to the best of our ability and think longer term in terms of how we're going to want to leverage data. So that was first. The second is clarity. So inevitably, there are going to be changes. We live in a dynamic world. It's a dynamic industry. And so when we do make changes, we want to be as clear as possible as to what changes have been made. It's really, really important. Not putting it in the fine print, not trying to bury it, not trying to spin it or rationalize it, but be really clear and open with our members that we've made a change, why we've made the change, and what it means for them. And then lastly is to provide controls. So we may make changes, and our members may not always agree with those changes, but we want to put the control in the hands of the membership so they can leverage their data the way they see fit.